welcome you to another tutorial on object-oriented programming in Python. In this tutorial, we are going to be covering a very interesting concept in object-oriented programming, that is, the instance methods, the static methods, and the class methods. I'm going to be explaining each one of these with examples one by one. So let's start on with the very first one, that is the instance methods. Instance methods are the most common type of methods that are used in the Python classes. They are so called because they can access unique data of their instances, or you may say objects. If you have two instances or objects, each created from the very same class, then they each may have different properties. They may have different attributes, different, you may say anything. For example, if you consider the example of a house, then one object might refer to the size of the building, the other object may define the color that is on the walls, the third object or the third instance may refer to the doors installed in the houses, and so on. One thing you must know about instant method is that instant method must have a self as a parameter, but you don't need to pass this in every time. Self is another Python special term which you might have covered in the previous tutorials. Inside any instant method, you can use self to access any data or method that may reside in your class. You won't be able to access them without going through self. Finally, as instant methods are the most common, there is no decorator needed for them. Any method you create will automatically be created as an instant method unless and until you tell the Python otherwise. So let me give you a very quick example and a very good example that will, I hope, clear each and every of your doubts relating to instant methods. So the only thing you need to know about instant method is that you have to specify the keyword self in the class as well as the functions. So let's start on with an example. So let's move on to PyCharm. So first we will define a class named, let's say, since we are talking about instances, so let's define a class named instances and a colon. And the first thing we need to do about this is that we need to define a constructor function in which we are going to define an object. The self object right in here was automatically added. I don't need to add it. So now what here I'm going to do is that I'm going to first print out I am the constructor function, and I'm going to add one more statement to make the thing look what actually is going on. So it's going to, this constructor function, whenever called, it's going to say that I'm the constructor function. Anything initialized using me have to be initialized using the self keyword. So I hope this is clear. Anything you are going to initialize in this constructor function is going to be initialized using this self keyword. So now I'm going to initialize something. Let's initialize my name. So I'm going to write in self.name equal to Omer Khan. So let's move out of this constructor function. So now I'm going to define an instance method. So what is an instance method? So let's name it as instance method. It is not something that is by default here. You can name it anything, and you can automatically see that self was automatically added right here. So now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to first print out, and it's going to say I am the instance method. Because why this is an instant method? Because we have added this self right here, and anything we want to print from here, for example, if I want to use this name right here, then I'm going to specify this using the self object, or you may say the self keyword. So I'm going to write in print out my name is the concatenation sign and then I'm going to write in self.name. So if I just move out of this body and create an object of this class name instance, and then I'm going to write in object dot the name of this function, that is the instant method. So I will just copy this, paste it right here, and that's okay. So let me just run it and then I'll explain what's going on. So I have my output, just scroll down. So first it says that I'm the constructor function. Then secondly it says that anything initialized using me have to be initialized using the self keyword. And thirdly it says I'm the instance method, and it says my name is Umair Khan. So what's going on in here? When I define this object and make it equal to instance, the constructor function was called automatically. Anything in the constructor function, if was in the print statement, it was printed on to the console screen. As you can see, these two statements right here, these two statements which were printed because we have these two print statements right here, and we have this text right in these print statements. So these were by default, or you may say as it is printed onto the console screen. The third thing is that I have initialized something named self.name equals to Umair Khan. If I just remove this self from here and now I run this code, you can see that I have a lot of errors because it says name was not recognized because it don't know what is name, because you can see right here that it has printed things up till I am the instance method, that is up till here, but when this statement was executed and self.name was present here, it did not recognize it, because this self is very important, because this is an instance method, and for an instance method you need to encapsulate this thing in your mind, that you always have to specify this self when initializing any variable, when initializing any function right here. For example, if I just remove this from here, and you can I don't need to run it, you can automatically see that I have this error right here. So I have to specify this self here. And if I just remove this self from here as well, now I just run this code, you can see that I still have errors because it did not recognize this name. So I have to specify the self.name with this. So if I just run this code now, you can see that it executed perfectly, because when using this object I call this instance method, this instance method was called, it printed out I'm the instance method, and it printed out my name is self.name. It used this object, and since this object refers to this constructor function for now, and this has this variable self.name, so this self.name was accessed in here, from here, using this instance method, one call using this object from here, and all these things were just printed out here. So the name variable is accessed through self. Notice that when this instance method function is called, you don't have to pass self in Python right here, because you can see that I haven't written self here, because it is going to generate because the compiler also has to do something. We have to make the compiler, our compiler is intelligent enough to add this self automatically here. The Python compiler does it for you. It pass in self, make the initializations, and anything then initialized using the self is going to be printed out. So I hope this is clear that what is the instance method. In the instance method, all you need to do is that any initialization you want to do is going to be done using the self keyword. Any function you want to initialize, you have to specify that self in here, and anything you want to access from this constructor function. For example, I have written self.name equal to Umair Khan. So when I want to access this name, I have to specify the self dot here, which is actually this object that grab every data from this constructor function from here. So I hope that instance function is now clear. So moving on to the next method that we have, what was the name of that? Yes, the second is the static method. So to explain static methods are methods that are related to a class in some way, but they don't need to access any class specific data, you don't have to use the keyword self, and you don't even need to instantiate an instance. You can simply call your method. So to explain static method, you can just add certain amendments in this code. You can just remove this from here. You can remove this data right in from here, and you can just remove this statement from here as well. I think that's perfect. So if I just run this code, alright, it's generating some errors. So what does the error says? It says that instant method takes 0 position but 1 was given, object.instant method in line number 10, and it says I'm the constructor function. Alright, I have spotted the error. Yes, I've spotted the error. What you need to do in here is that this method, the first thing you need to do is that this method need to be called automatically, because since we have not specified any kind of self.things in here, so you don't have to be calling this. And secondly, you have to just write in, it is not the instance method anymore, it is the static method, and it's also going to say I'm the static method. It's not going to store the identity of another method, so a static method here as well, and it's going to work perfectly, I think now. Yes, it worked perfectly, and it says I'm the static method. Now you might be confused that why this was not printed, that I'm the constructor function. This is the only ability of, or you may say the part, or you may say the feature of a static method, that a static method is called independently. It doesn't bother whether a constructor function exists or not. It's not going to be called using the object. It's going to store something in the object, but it's going to be called using the instances class, and we're going to write an instances.static method directly. We are not going to be using this object because it's going to give us error, because since when the constructor function is called, in this case, when we write in here that object equal to instances, let me just specify it down here so that we can easily remove it, instances, and then we specify object dot static method and underscore right here. So in this case, an object of the instance method is created and this constructor function is called. Once this constructor function is called, and after that we call this, then we have to specify this self here. If you don't specify this self here and make it an instance function, because when we call a method using an object, then that is actually calling an instance method, not a static method. When we are calling an instant method, when we are calling a static method, we don't have to specify an object. Very simple scenario. In this case, as you can clearly see, that we have this object right here, and then using that object, or you may say instance, we are calling the static method. Using an object and calling a static method seems to be a very stupid thing. It's a very simple thing. Using an instance, don't call a static method. Call a static method just like this, to be very simple. When you are using an instance and calling a static method, then it's not calling a static method, it's actually calling a method that is an instance method. For example, if I just remove this from here and I run this now, it executed perfectly and it says I'm the constructor function instance, I'm the static function, but it's not a static function because I have specified this self right here. So all I need to do is press Ctrl Z twice, remove this from here, remove this from here as well. Now run this code and it's going to say I'm the static method, because static method is a method that is going to be called independently. The static method decorator was used to tell Python that this method is a static method. The static methods are great for utility functions which perform a task in isolation. They don't need to access the class data. They should be completely self-contained, or you may say self-oriented, or you may say completely independent, and they should only work with data passed in as arguments. You may use a static method to add two numbers together or print a given string. For example, in this case, if I want to pass something like in the previous case I printed out the name, and in this case I want to pass in the name, I have to pass in from here. For example, if I just pass in a string here, named Omer, name a variable here, name, and then print out and say simply name, run this code, you can see right here that it says I'm the static method, and then it says Omer. So in the previous case, you have to use the self object to access something that was initialized in this constructor function. But in this case, since we are dealing with a static method, and for the explanation of static method, I told you that a static method is the method that is self-contained, or you may say is an independent method. So you don't have to deal with the constructor function. If you want to initialize some variable, you have to pass that variable as an argument to the static method. So I hope this is clear. So the next method was, the next method was the class method. Now, thank you for now. The next method was the class method. So what are class methods? Let's move on to PyCharm. So what is a class method? A class method are the third and final object-oriented program method type to know. Class method know about their class. They know that which class I belong to, which in case of static methods don't know which class they belong to. They are going to just simply perform a task. Since they are self-contained, independent, they're going to perform the task. They don't know which class they are dealing with, but the class method know about their class. The instant method also know about their class. So for the explanation of class methods now, class methods know about their class. They can't access specific instance data, but they can call other static method. For example, if we have a static method in a function, in a class, and then we have a class method as well, then using the class method, we can simply call a static method. So class method don't need self as an argument. They do need a parameter called CLS to make them a class method. As in the case of the instant method, you have to specify self name self, so that it is the instance method. In case of static method, you don't need to specify anything. And in case of class method, in the method you want to make a class method, you have to specify CLS, that stands for class. So class method are created using a simple, you can create them using something called decorators, but that is not something that is always required. So we already have a constructor function, we already have a static method. All we need to do is make certain additions to this code to make the concept of class method clear. So I'm going to make a function name class method, and this class method is not going to have self, it's going to have CLS, so that it is a class method. So now you can simply see the distinction right in here. This constructor function has the self, this class method has the CLS, this static method has something we have passed in as argument, we can just leave it as empty. And for the instance method, we also have to specify the self. So now to this class method, we have to call this static method using this class method. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to use this CLS object. So I'm going to write in CLS dot the name of this method I want to call, that is the static method. So I'm going to just Control V this, let me just remove this for now, and I'm going to pass in my name as well. Good enough. And now down here outside this class, what I need to do is that I need to create an object of this instances class, and using that object now, or you may say instance, what I'm going to do is that I am going to call this class method. So I'm going to just copy this, paste it right here, and this code is going to now run perfectly, I think. No, very sad. Alright, so what does the error say? It says that static method takes one positional argument with two are given. Moreover, it says we have error in this CLS the static method as well, and then we have errors in object.class method as well. So what can be the possible problem? Yep, I've got it. It says static method takes one positional argument but two are given, which means that it is not recognizing a static method or a class method. So all you need to do is that you need to specify, but first let's specify a print statement right here that says I am the class method. Alright, all we need to do now is that we need to add at the rate of and tell it that it's a class method. This is actually a decorator which you are going to cover in very detail in the future. We have a very special and separate section on this very topic named decorators. In that you will study in very detail about this. All you need for now is that whenever you are going to specify a class method or a static method, then you have to specify at the rate of class method. You can't use any word of your own choice. You have to specify this very word named class method right here and this very word named static method right here. And now if I just run this code, you can see that it's ran perfectly. The first thing it executed was I'm the constructor function, because the first thing we have done here is that we have created an object, and when creating an object we have called the instance for the constructor function. So anything in the constructor function, the block of constructor function is going to be executed, and it says I am the constructor function. Secondly, we have called the class method, and it says I am the class method. Right here you can see that the second statement that was executed was it says that I'm the class method. Then it passed in this omer to this static method. This was a static method. It was recognized using this decorator, and it printed out I am the static method. You can see right here the third statement is I am the static method, and the fourth thing was it printed out my name. So I hope that it is clear that what is the purpose of class method now. Class method is going to call a static method from within him. So I hope that's clear, and I hope that you very well know the difference between an instance method, static method, and a class method now. So to just summarize this entire code, the instant method is the most common method type. It is to enable you to access data and properties that are unique to each and every instance. A static method cannot access anything else in the class, totally self-contained and totally independent function. The class method can access limited method in the class. It can modify class specific details. It can moreover call a static method from within inside himself. So I hope it is clear. If you haven't got the concept very much clear, then you can go through this tutorial again. So that's it with me. Thank you so much guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial.